Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bikinis After Babies. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I am so excited to bring you guys this episode. I am one of your hosts, Mandy Rashawn, here with your other beautiful host.
Hey everybody, I'm Gillian Hughes. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm really happy to have you here. We have a very special guest today. I love these episodes. I love bringing these amazing women to our show so that they can share their stories with you. And we have a very inspiring story today. Today we are welcoming Nicole Johnson. Nicole is an IFBB Bikini Pro and a mother of five. She has been competing since 2010. She took a short break from competing and had twins and returned to the stage just a few years later to take home her IFBB Pro card. And in 2023, she took home her first pro win and was invited to compete at the Masters Olympia in Romania. I am so excited to have her on today. Welcome to Bikinis After Babies, Nicole Johnson.
Thank you. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, we're really, really excited. There's so
Yeah.
many things I want to dive into. Before we started this episode, we were talking about having big families, and Nicole's got five kiddos. Tell us the age of all of your kids, Nicole.
Yes, let's see. I've got my oldest, she's 23, and she's in Utah. I'm in Montana. Boston is 19, Beckham is 14, and then I have 10-year-old twins that are here with me in Montana.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a big
It's a
family.
lot.
Like
That's
that has to be
amazing.
so fun. Like it has to,
Yes,
like it's a
but
lot, but it's so much fun.
it is, and they're all just really big into sports, so that keeps us busy and super fun.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, before I get too deep into all of what goes on in your daily life, tell us a little bit about how you got started competing.
Yeah, gosh, I was always into fitness and competing in terms of I'm a competitive person, not necessarily on the stage, but since I was young, I was just always into. We used to do, competitions in grade school and middle school with push-ups and pull-ups and climbing the rope, and I was always really into that. And the girls, it was very rare to have girls beat the class in those types of competitions, and that was something that I was thriving in at a young age, more so than academics. Don't get me wrong, I am an academic, but the physical part of anything that you would do growing up was something I loved. And then as a teenager, my uncle was competing as for Mr. Utah in bodybuilding, and that kind of lit my fire watching him and seeing the things he would eat and his body change. And he always looked so good. I didn't necessarily know I would be on a stage someday, but he kind of lit the fire for weightlifting that I started at age 15.
Wow.
So, gosh, I waited, several years. So how old was I in 2010? I can't even remember. 30s. I was in my 30s and competed in figure and didn't really expect much from it. I just thought I was just going to do one show. And I did a couple of shows and took the overall in all those shows, both in open and masters. So I was at least 35. So that's right. Um, Went to one national show as a figure competitor and placed 12th out of 42. So I thought, gosh, I really not that great at this. I felt like a failure because I wasn't winning because a regional show is much different than a national show. But I didn't realize then that that actually was pretty good for a first national show. And
Yeah.
um, so I kind of stopped after that for several years until after I had the twins. And then I started competing in bikini, which kind of looks like what figure used to.
Hmm.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
figure
wild.
girls today, it's a little bit more muscle than I want to carry around. I totally admire and respect the sport, but bikini's more for me. So
Yeah. Awesome. So when you did that national show and, had the placing that you did, you really at that point were like, I don't think this is for me. And had you tried bikini yet at that point? Because I think
no,
it was new.
bikini back then, bikini to me was kind of, I don't want to say this in an offensive way, but it was kind of a joke. I don't feel like you really had to have muscle. You just had to look good in a bikini. And I really admired the dedication that goes behind muscle. And I think that's why
Yeah.
I was originally figure. But yeah, I kind of just thought like, wow, I suck. I should just stop. And I don't know what changed with my mindset. I think after having the twins, I just thought, I want to be able to get back on stage and say I could do it because I mean, I was huge. My twins were big. They were 6'9" and 6'7".
Wow.
Um, and I mean, I was like out to here, and so it was just
Yeah.
a challenge for me. And then my coach was awesome. He's like, you can totally turn pro, and that was before my first show. And I was like, really? Because I was just going to do one and say I could do it.
Right.
And then, 3 months later, he helped me get my pro card. So
Wow. So how soon after having the twins did you turn pro?
let's see, I had them in 2013 and I turned pro in 2018.
Wow.
So
That's
I
awesome.
waited for a minute.
Yeah.
But I always was, up for crazy challenges. I know my family thinks I'm insane, but whether it's a marathon or I'd spent one summer where I did 6 century bike rides, which are 6 100-mile races, and there's always
Wow.
something physically that I like to do for as a challenge. So, but
Yeah.
bikini is by far the hardest, I think. I mean, a
Yeah.
discipline from morning to night every single day for consecutive months, and it's not just like a century ride. You train, you have fun, you kind of eat what you want. But bikini is much more demanding.
I've always heard that from people that have been in the sport for a length of time, that it's just this sport is by far the hardest than anything that they have ever done. Like any college sport, any like marathon, triathlon, and it's because of that. It's because it is nonstop. Like even in your off season, you still are mindful. You still have to care. It's an improvement season, if you're at that level and you have to be so mindful of it. Whereas, other sports, you run a marathon, you could still eat, you still kind of eat whatever you want like the entire time and just
Right.
focus on your time. So,
Yeah, and I think that's why I keep coming back to it is I really like difficult things, and
mhm.
it is by far. And mentally too, not just physically, but every day, looking in the mirror and judging and wondering if am I going to be good enough? Should I keep training? Should I,
Yeah.
it's a mental challenge as well.
Absolutely. Do you think that that was ever challenging for you, like coming back after having twins and maybe seeing your body in a different way, after having big babies, and it does change your physique, but did that ever play a role or a part of your journey?
Not really. I think I mean, I think more my age, more so than having the kids, because my
Yeah.
body really bounced back well after having the twins. I think within a week of having them, my stomach was pretty flat. I don't really have pictures, but and to me, I was used to that because with my other three kids, I, bounced back pretty well. But for me, it was more, in my 40s. I think was I 40 when I earned my pro card? I think somewhere right around there. But yeah, age, because age plays mind games with you, I think, especially being a woman
Yeah.
and seeing your, things change and you can't do the same things or feel, you're not as youthful, I guess you could say, because I feel like I'm definitely stronger than I was prior, but age is, and that's what I'm fighting. And that's what I love is I want to have a youthful look and a youthful body for as many years as I can. And thank goodness the IFBB League gives us these opportunities to compete as a masters athlete.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's not just about the young girls. And my coach has even said that. He said, this is the division that's actually growing the most
Mhm.
in bikini is the masters divisions, which I love.
Yeah,
So,
it is. I mean, all of these girls that we're seeing now, they're not going to stay in their 20s forever. And so, it used to be, I mean, I remember when I was in the Masters, there would be like, four or five girls, and it was smaller. This was like, 10 years ago when I was mid 30s. And, it was almost just like people would not think it was as serious or it was easier. And now watching the evolution of the masters athletes and like how deep the quality is and the muscle maturity, and then just like everybody looks so youthful. So I'll ask you this. This is not one of the questions that I was going to ask, but do you feel like in a lot of ways, this lifestyle and having muscle and taking good care of yourself, like that is slowing down the aging process for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think muscle in general, whether you're competing or not, slows down the aging process. My husband's a doctor. He was a hormone therapy doctor for many years. And so he's really into biohacking, and I've learned a lot from him. We're
Yeah.
we're all into anti-aging. Any way we can, biohack the system so that we can maintain our youthful, not necessarily look, but we want to be able to do things with our kids for many
Yeah.
years and be active. And he's 60 and goes up on hills and does flips and all kinds of crazy stuff on snowboards. And
That's awesome.
that's kind of what we want to do and be able to do for many years. So
Yeah. I love that because I think people will look at
Hmm.
our sport and be like, "Oh, that's so hard on your body and it's so much work and like don't you just feel like you need a break and isn't it bad for you?" And I'm like, "I've like knock on wood never been injured. Like I stay really healthy. People tell me all the time I look younger than I am. Like don't you find that it's the opposite. It's a very good thing for your health and for your body."
yeah, it's having muscle on your frame, and we lose, I can't remember the percentage per year, once you're over the age of 30, start losing muscle mass. So
Yeah.
to actually put on and maintain muscle mass is a challenge, but gosh, you'll reap those benefits for many years.
Yeah.
So
So your husband has actually competed before. So I did a big
he
old deep
has.
dive. So what's that like? And wasn't there a show that one of your kiddos competed with you guys
Uh-huh.
too? That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Oh,
So
that'd
what
be
It was
was
so
that
cool.
like?
fun.
It was so much fun. Yeah. So my husband he was just a good sport. It was nothing ever on his bucket list or anything. I was just like, hey, I want to get back into this, do this with me. And we had only been married a year or something. And so he had done a show with me. And then his youngest son, Jake, he was 22, I think, at the time, and then me. And it was so much fun. Jake won overall in physique, and he only prepped for 4 weeks. He's just like this walking muscle man
Genetic.
all the time.
Nice.
And then, Vaughn and I prepped for 4 months. And of course, I did very well. And Vaughn did great too. I mean, he was competing against guys 15 to 20 years younger and placed fourth. It's not his passion. His passion is health, but it was a blast. And then my
Yeah.
son, Boston, who's 19, he's going to do a show with me in a few months. So
Oh,
his
that's
first
so
show. So that'll
awesome.
be,
I
yeah, it's
love
fun kind
it.
of going through the process with him and walking him through, how important it is to be disciplined on this or that. And because, man, is it a different road if you've never competed before, as both of you probably know, it's quite a lot. So it's fun to see him go through that and be able to do it with him in a couple months together.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
that's
so
so
neat.
neat.
I think
Yeah.
that's so neat. People ask all the time, like, "Oh, do you think your girls will ever compete?" And I think it's just, I don't think that they think anyone doesn't do this. I think they've just seen me do this for so long. Like, doesn't everybody like lift weights and, do competitions, So
Yeah.
that's so cool. That's going to be awesome to do that, have that experience together. That's
Yeah.
cool. And so, like in your marriage and in your family dynamic, it sounds like fitness and health are like a huge part of that. Is that something that's like really become like an important foundation? I'm sure you've got friends who maybe are in a situation where maybe their significant other is not on the same page as them. Like, how important do you think that is for success?
Yeah, I think it's really important because your partner is your support. And if you don't have their support and they're not on the same page, it can make life hell or make it not worth it to compete. Um, but gosh, everything in our house, everything we do, we've got a weight room. My 10-year-old twins, they go up there and do squats and pull ups, and everyone around us in our family is just all about it. And it's kind of just a way of life here. Since I married my husband, we've had to throw out all kinds of things that I might have had in my house before. We don't have, like cow's milk, and we don't have everything in here is grass fed, grass finished. Everything is, top quality for your health. So I think that helps with competing. It's not necessary. You can have, excuse my language, shitty meat and still compete. But, for your long term health, that's something that, and all my kids love it. We don't have cereal. We don't have things like that in our house. And that my twins have even said, I go to school and the lunch ladies say, "Oh my gosh, you guys have such healthy food." And my kids are like, "We do?" Because they just don't know any different.
Right.
Yeah.
But
It's a very
so
like
I don't know if
normal
that
thing.
answers your question, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that that's a huge piece of success. I think it's very difficult for people to be successful if there's, just a lot of pressure, or maybe just everyone in their social circle or their significant other is, not on board with staying healthy. And I don't think that it's necessary to like have a spouse that competes or, does things on
Mhm.
the level of extreme that maybe we do for our sport. But I agree with you. I think it's important to have someone who's like on that same page and wants to, live a healthy lifestyle for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really neat.
Yeah, I think definitely living like the healthier lifestyle. And I think that has something to do with us, like as you age too, because I know like I've competed since 2016 and I started in my my mid 20s and kind of like, I just went and bought the cheapest meat and the cheapest vegetables and the cheapest things, right? It was easy, it was convenient. But now, like, about to be 35 and like being a nutritionist for so many years, I like go like, and our pantry is very similar, and how I teach our son is very similar. He like, you got to be mindful of your protein. Where's your protein coming from? How are you cooking it? What are you cooking it in? Like, what is it actually going to do inside you? And that's what's so I find I love about this sport as you're getting older, because it's like, okay, well, eating this upsets my stomach. Where did it come from? What's the percentage in it? What is it made with? And you think a little differently, and then you give that to your kids, so then your kids carry that on. And I love that about what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also want to make sure we go above and beyond what's required for competing. Like you
Mhm.
say, I'm taking colostrum supplements, and we have the collagen protein and all the things that aren't necessarily required, but like you say, just for health.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. So much of our division is the look, and of course the physique is really
yeah,
important, but wanted to make sure that your skin looks good and all of that. So I think quality nutrition goes beyond just macros, right?
right. Yeah.
So, um, so talk to me a little bit about having twins and getting your midsection to look as good as it does, because I did dig a little bit and see a post that you made about having diastasis recti, and literally, I mean, anyone could zoom in on your photo and just you have the most amazing waistline. So, what was that journey like of getting your body to look the way that it does? I mean, nobody would believe you have had 5 kids. It's incredible.
Well, thank you, first of all. But gosh, when I get super lean, I can see that separation, and that's where I see when we talk about age, and I'll see a 22-year-old waist versus my waist, and after having 4 pregnancies, um, I mean, it is hard mentally sometimes. I've thought in the past, should I get that fixed surgically? And it wouldn't be for the stage; it would just be for me. And I just keep thinking, it's not, to me, it's not worth it. Like, I feel like it's fine. I've never had any judge or my coach or anything say anything about it. And I feel okay. I mean, I definitely don't feel like I did when I was 25 by any means, but I feel like, I can get done what I need to get done. And I can see that. And now I look at it more as, that's kind of like a warrior scar. Like, that my body made these 5 beautiful kids, and this is a result of that. And these younger athletes don't have that, but they also don't have the kids. That
Yeah.
to me is a huge benefit and reward and in my life. So yeah, I've gone back and forth mentally. Like, I look at it as, oh gosh, that shows that I've had kids, but now viewing it more as, gosh, it's a warrior mark. I had my 14-year-old had second and third degree burns as a two-year-old kiddo, and so his feet are severely scarred. and I tell him all the time the same thing, that, dude, that is something that, because he says kids will make fun of it or say comments about it. And I tell him that's something that defines you, and you overcame something really big and hard in your life. And that's kind of a result of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I struggled with it a lot more earlier in my life, but now I see things differently.
I think that's really, really beautiful, actually, and really going, well, look at all of these things that I have in my life, on top of also having a kick-ass career in the competition scene, because you are an ambassador of the sport. There's so many women who look up to you, and, it hasn't stopped you or like, affected your placing, because you're still killing it at the top. So I think that it's just amazing and really inspiring too. I think it's a really great way to look at it, because a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I have this, and that maybe is why I shouldn't compete." And I mean, we've seen girls on stage, and you see them backstage, and you go, "I didn't even notice that scar you had," and they totally posed around it. You
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
even see. And so I just think, I think that that's great. I think it's a lot. I think in our heads too, when we kind of start to worry about this or that, and someone will say, "I didn't even notice you had one boob that was bigger than the other," or like
Right.
weird feet or something. So
Well, and even women with, stretch marks. I don't have any stretch marks, but I've seen some women turn pro with a lot of stretch marks on their belly, and they just know how to work it on stage, and they own it, and that's just what you've got to do in this sport. Your confidence shows.
yeah,
So if you get up on stage and I'm thinking about that separation in my abs, and I'm walking and posing accordingly, that judges will see that. I mean, you've got to
yeah,
just walk out there and own it. So I admire women who can do that.
I'm a big stretch mark advocate here because I have them. So when I got pregnant with my son, I reached over 200 pounds. So my skin stretched all over. So I have stretch marks on my lower. So when I wear high-waisted things, you can't see them at all. But like as soon as I put anything that's below my belly button, it's like scars, and then around my glutes, on the back of my legs, and on the back of my knees. And I like 10 years ago, I was so scared and I was so self-conscious. And like I always tell Jillian, I got my very first bikini in 2016, and I was scared out of my mind because I'm like, I'm gonna get judged on all my stretch marks and I'm not gonna look good and all of these things. And then you get backstage and you realize you're like, everybody has something. There's always something. And now like I push it out there as much as possible. I'm like, look, 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 look. You can be confident in a bikini on the beach, on stage, live life, and like exactly like you said, they're your warrior marks. Like you
Hmm.
have beautiful kids because of them. Be proud of it.
Right.
It's a part of you.
Yeah. No, I admire some of my friends who compete with the stretch marks, because I'm like, wow, you turn pro and you look freaking amazing regardless. And so, yeah, ditto to what you said.
some. So did you have to follow like any sort of like physical therapy or specific ab movements for the diastasis recti? Because we hear sometimes that people will do like, pelvic floor work and they can't do traditional ab exercises. What was that like for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had two different coaches. My ex-husband, who actually has passed away, he was my first coach, and we really didn't do many abs at all. I think genetically, I've had the gift of a small waist. And coaches view ab exercises differently. My current coach has me do them quite often. And I've had coach hugely. I've had him since 2018 when I came back to the stage. So I haven't done anything different than any other girls. I
Mhm.
think it's just more of kind of the look you want, um, because abs are made in the kitchen, right? But how dense you want your ab muscles to be is how much you're going to actually work them. So I do them regularly now, but when I was successful before, I didn't.
Yeah.
So of course, I mean, I could look at my abs and critique them, and they can always be better. But at the same time, sometimes with age and after having kids, the way your abs are shaped, they could push out more, or, I mean, they all are just genetically, they're just all different, right? We're all very individual human beings, but I haven't done anything different than
Yeah.
any other competitor, I don't think.
Awesome. Well, that's helpful because I think sometimes people can go a little crazy and do things they don't need to do or, invest in things they don't need to spend money on. And I'm
Yeah.
like you, I just say, abs are made in the kitchen. And certainly if somebody has like a definite injury to their core where they, if they've had a C-section and they can't engage their lower ab, then we might need to be a little more specific. But yeah, I think, as women, and now we have so many resources. I'm like you and I competed back, I would say like in the times of the dinosaur, because I had to figure one piece. That's how long I've been doing this.
Okay.
And so, I mean, we didn't have like Instagram or TikTok or like anything. So you would just go to a show and I mean, you'd be like, oh, am I supposed to be doing that? Because we just didn't. But now it's like, now there's so much information and people will say, oh, I follow this person and she does this and she wears this thing to the gym. And I'm like, no, like, don't overthink this. And we
Mhm.
can, as women, we can definitely do those deep dives, especially if we're fixated on something and it's something different every week for me.
I think that information is actually more harmful than helpful for those
I
reasons.
Yeah.
agree.
You
The
know, you
Yeah.
information overload.
sit and think about, or some athletes will think about who's showing up instead of focusing on what they're doing. They're thinking about what these other athletes are doing, and then you just get all in your head. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not healthy. I don't think that's
Yeah.
healthy at all. I
We
think
No,
we
it's
talk
good.
about that.
Mhm.
yeah, it's too much.
I think
Yeah,
it's
with our
good to have
clients.
gals that you look up to, or that you, and more than anything for me, I love meeting women. Each show I've done, I've met amazing women from all over the states, and it's fun to cheer each other on rather than look at each other as I want to beat her or this or that. And yes, I'm competitive, but I'm kind of at that age now though where if I'm not on the stage, I'm going to be cheering on all these girls. I'm going to be cheering them on regardless. But, I remember some shows in particular where right after, I maybe placed second or third, and that first place girl, I mean, I don't walk off stage pissed. I walk off stage congratulating her and making it about her, on that particular day. And that to me is a real fun part of the sport that I don't think, in fact, I know for a fact there's some athletes that are not that way. They're all about themselves, and I think it's good to, women should support each other and lift each other up, and that's something I've really enjoyed. So,
I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like almost every episode we talk about this just a little bit about the backstage experience because majority of the time whenever like a lot of new athletes when they're getting ready for a show, it's very nerve-wracking. They don't know what to expect backstage, right? Like you automatically kind of assume it's a bunch of women, so it's going to be catty and cold and judgy. But really it's like it couldn't be further from the opposite where everybody is backstage for the most part, like cheering each other on, meeting people, like helping with jewelry, helping with suits, having a good time. I always like I say a lot, it's like it's the one time you're around all your people eating rice cakes, right? Like
Yeah.
you get to be around like all the same people where you spent like, 4, 6, however many months the only one eating rice cakes. Now everybody eats them.
right.
it's
Be with your
so it's
people.
fun and everybody loves it. So I always love that we touch on that kind of every episode because that way when our clients and other new athletes listen, they're just like, it's gonna be okay, and they can calm down and they can know it will be okay. Backstage will be fun.
Right.
You got to make
Yeah.
You have to, especially like as many shows as you do, Nicole. Like, there
Mm-hmm.
was one season I looked at, you did like 6 or 7. And so, if you don't have a fun experience, and if you are that person that is like not happy with your results and you're not enjoying the process, like you don't have a long time in the sport. It's probably one of the keys for you because you have been doing this for so long. And I mean, I can't even count how many shows you've done, but it's been a lot. So, I
Yeah.
bet it is just, a matter of really enjoying not only the prep part, but also the experience of traveling and being there. So,
Yeah. So much fun. So fun to meet women and then be able to compete with them again, like Masters Olympia, for example.
Yeah.
I'd competed with many of those women before, and it was so fun to travel so far into it was such a beautiful city and such a great experience. And to be able to be there with, some girls that you'd been able to compete with before. So,
Yeah, I want to talk about that for sure because that was so exciting to see your name on the list. And I didn't realize like the number of people that applied. Like there was a lot of people that applied.
hmm
So can you tell me a little bit about that process of applying and then what it was like to hear that you were selected?
it's actually kind of a funny story because I didn't even tell my husband that I put my name in the hat. Because I was just like, oh, I don't know. What are the odds? Probably zero. But I thought, what the hell? I'm just going to do it. And I'm like, Romania sounds amazing too. What a great excuse to travel, right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm trying to remember. I think they started announcing it in October of 2022 that they were going to, bring back the Masters Olympia. And so I started thinking about it. And then I think it asked you to send in an essay, I want to say January. I think it was January. And, they gave you a couple weeks and then mentioned that they would announce it April, I think it was 23rd, I want to say. Because Wasatch Warrior, I did April 15th, and that was my first pro win as a master's athlete. So I was really excited then. I was like, oh my gosh, this is coming out in a few days, but I don't want to tell anyone because I'm probably not on the list. I did tell my coach, and I told my husband by that point, I was like, look, they're going to make an announcement, probably not on the list, but um, so I was actually starting a new job up here because I've just relocated up to Montana about a year ago, just working part time as an accountant. And I was on the job and they were about to make the announcement. So my husband works in the ER in the same hospital. So I run down and get him. I'm like, sorry, I got to run for just a minute. I grab my husband. I'm like, let's just watch this together and just see. And I saw the list before I heard him, read the names. They popped it up and I kept looking down and it said Nicole Jennifer Johnson. And I was like, wait, is that me? Wait, that's me, right? There's no other Jennifer Johnson. Nicole Jennifer Johnson, is there? So I was like in shock for 48 hours because I think it was
Yeah.
just such an opportunity of a lifetime for me just to be able to do something like that, and it's different being chosen versus signing up to do it. It was just quite an honor and such, like I said, I could talk about it for days. It was such an incredible experience.
Yeah.
Because once they did, tell you who was on the list, then you're like, oh my gosh, am I even gonna, I'm like, I don't even care if I get. I think there were 21 bikini girls, and I'm like, I don't even care if I get 21st. I just want to get there and bring my best and just do. So the fact that we got, top 10 and did as well as we did, I was just so pleased. So
Yeah.
fun.
That's
And just,
incredible.
gosh, we had such a great time, all of us girls there.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Hmm.
It's just so cool. It is a huge honor. I mean, all of us girls are, we look up to the top pros in not only in the open, but in the masters. Like
hmm
those are the women that we want to look like, we want to have careers like them. And so it was so exciting. I mean, I hope they do it every year because it's a big event and it gives us as masters like something to really like something tangible. Like I think everybody's that who competes is like, oh, my dream would be to go to the Olympia one day. And there's just so many pros. So to have this Masters Olympia, which is
hmm
completely incredible and prestigious, and I mean, and everybody looked so amazing. It made for the first time that they'd had it. Well, it really was the first time for the Masters Bikini because I think they'd had a Masters Olympia
It's
with bodybuilding, but to have you all be the first of the bikini, like what an amazing honor that was. It had to be so incredible.
It was so cool. And speaking about age, one of the gals I look up to the most that I actually compete with is she's in her almost mid 50s and she looks so dang good. And I'm
Yeah.
like, because there are days where you question yourself and you're like, am I too old for this? Really? Should I? And then I look at, some of the gals standing right next to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like 6, 7, 8 years older, and look at them. They're like banging. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And they're
it's
happy.
it's cool. Yeah, yeah,
That's
so fun.
they're like Jillian and I, we actually got to, so I'm in Kansas City. I'm about like 3, 4 hours away from Jillian. And we went to a seminar this weekend. And I always talk about this one woman, and she turned pro in bodybuilding last year, 72 years old. And
Oh
she
my
didn't
God.
even start competing until she was 68 or 69. And she's just so joyful. And so Jillian, you got to meet her this weekend.
Yeah, I love
But
her.
like
She's so
she's
cute.
so bubbly and joyful, and she works a full-time job. And she's happy, and I'm like, that's goals. Like that's just goals. Like how just elated she is and jumpy and bubbly and passionate. It's like I absolutely want to be like that when I'm 72. I can't.
Same.
Yeah.
That's me too. I'm like, whether or not I'm on the stage, I just want to be able to
Mhm.
kick some ass, in my 60s and 70s.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
And it's a lot. Like, I mean, you've got a busy family. There's a lot going on all the time. It would be really easy just completely pour yourself into your kids' stuff. You'd be busy enough. You really don't need a hobby because your schedule is jam-packed. But and I think I do see that a lot in like some of the moms on the other teams. Like, I'm like, just you can make time for a little bit for you. Like, I'm not saying you have to do what I
mhm.
do, but I think it's important to carve out time for yourself and take care of your health, and even better if you can pursue a hobby so that you do have that for you. And I think one narrative I'd like to see go away is that people say this is a selfish sport. Like we hear it all
Mm,
the time, and I'm like, but not if you, I mean, you don't have to make it that way. Like moms do it all the
right.
time, you know? So how do you juggle everything that you have going on so that you can show up for your family and still pursue this career in bodybuilding?
Well, I think, like you mentioned, I think it's really important to involve and include your kiddos and or your spouse, not necessarily in competing, but in some of the things that you have to do to compete. So, healthy meals several times a day. My one of my twins likes to do an ab. He asked me to do abs every single day with him in the living room, and we have like this 10-minute ab exercise that he's more into than I am. Because some days I'm like, oh man, I already been to the gym. I'm so tired. But just to include him in things like that, he also, his name's Gage. He asked me to go up and we do pull ups. We used to do it every night, but there were so many nights I think I turned him down that he quit asking. So I have to kind of bring that back up. But I think just including, your family and those things. Every time my older kids come up to see me, we'll make it we'll make a point to go to the gym together. And I think weightlifting is something I'm really passionate about, more so than competing. And I want all of my kids to understand what it is and how to do it. And I like to teach them. I've got a son starting high school football this year, and he always comes to me and asks for advice on lifting, and because he wants to get stronger. And that's something that I think is really helpful, because then when they see me going to do that for my prep, they're also seeing it for, this is good for me for football, this is good for me for wrestling, this is good for me just to be a strong kiddo. And so I don't know, I just think inclusion.
Do you find that the way that you eat, because you mentioned as he's going to high school football, so I have my son's into soccer,
Okay.
but so do you find that the way you eat and your choice of food, and now that as they're getting older and they're seeing like, okay, this is what like mom's choosing, this is how she's doing it, do you find that they're gravitating towards it in a way more from like, I want to say like what their friends are eating or other options? Do you find that?
Yeah, 100%. I will, they'll be asking me, can you get me creatine, or can you get me, and he's only 14, but he'll call me up and say, look, mom, I'm cooking, or how do I cook this? And so he'll take a pound of beef and be cooking it as we're talking, FaceTiming, and kind of helping prepare his meals. And that's one way that I like to show my love for my kids, is preparing their meals and helping them with nutrition. And especially if that's kind of their goal is, I've got two boys putting on weight, and I want to show them and educate them on how to do that. And they just absolutely love it. So I think, I think their love language is receiving that kind of gift. And for me, it's giving, and educating them, especially with my husband. They'll sit down and ask him all kinds of questions on nutrition,
Yeah.
They'll talk
Yeah.
to me more about weightlifting and him more on nutrition and the importance of protein intake and making sure that they're, doing that. So,
Yeah. I find that when something I really enjoy is that when my son comes to me and he's recently wanted to put on more size, be conscious of his running, things like that. But if he says, I know I need to eat protein, I know this is what you eat, but I don't like this. Like he doesn't like some of my chicken or he doesn't like some of my food. I'm like, that's okay. You can still get protein from other sources and this is how you can do it. And being able to show them like, okay, you don't like protein drinks, you like muscle egg. You don't like chicken in a slow cooker, but you like grilled chicken or air fried chicken. Like you don't have to just eat in a box. You don't have to eat one thing, like one size fits all. You can experiment with all sorts of things and still get your protein intake and have it in a healthy fashion and not just be like, oh, well, I don't like that, so I'm just going to eat fried chicken, And
right.
I love that we can show them that through a nutritional way.
Yeah, and one thing that I've got my kids hooked on that's kind of funny, as you mentioned that, is protein coffee.
Oh,
Because you
yeah, that
kind
sounds
of
good.
get sick of protein shake, right? So we buy the highest quality coffee. It's called Danger Coffee, no mold, has a lot of good minerals in it for you. And then I just put our protein in it, and I'm not kidding you. We go through that protein like you wouldn't believe. Because every morning I'm making, when my older kids come up, gosh, I'm probably a bad mom, but my 10-year-old boys, they have protein coffee every morning.
My son drinks muscle egg every morning. He drinks 30 grams of chocolate muscle egg every morning. But he does. He drinks a cup of it and just likes it plain.
Wow.
He doesn't like protein powder, but he'll drink a cup of muscle egg with his like chicken sausage. But it's funny you mentioned protein coffee. After every workout, I make protein coffee. I love
It's
it.
like you look forward to it. In fact, that's what I got
Oh,
right here. It's
Yeah.
I already drank mine because I made iced coffee. It's so hot here in Kansas City right now.
oh,
And I'd use a vanilla latte flavor and shake it and I pour it over iced coffee and I'm like, this is
sounds
so much
Heaven.
better than a shake.
so good. I know. I
Love
wish I
it.
could take you on a tour and show you all the fun things, but I'm like sneaking in. It's called Interfuel, a probiotic in their coffee, and MCT
Hmm.
oil, and all these things that
Yeah.
they don't realize, that they're consuming. But my older kids do. But yeah, it's
I,
I
kind of
think that's
fun to
great.
teach them, and be a part of that.
hmm
They'll
I
I
always
do
think
that
say,
to
we
my
want
husband.
I think it needs to
right?
be like
I do.
normalized though, because I think like
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah.
misconception about our sport is that like everything we're doing is for a certain look, which yeah, to a certain degree, like we are judged based on our appearance. But I'll talk to people all the time like, I eat so different than my family. My kids won't eat anything other than mac and cheese and
Mhm.
nuggets. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what if you just meet halfway? Like it does make things easier if you're not the only one eating your like prep food and then everyone else
Mhm.
eats like normal food. Like it's almost like we need to make those staples and the things that we eat in prep more normalized because they are healthier at the end of the day. It's not really that we eat that much different when we're not preparing for a competition, you know?
Right. Well, and if you think about it, who do you care about most in this world? It's your kids. So if you're
Yeah.
feeding them pure crap, and all these processed foods, yeah, they're not competing, but you're changing their DNA to be more disease prone. So you
Yeah.
really got to think about what I'm putting into my child's body right now and what I'm asking them to eat is going to change the rest of their lives for them, whatever path they go down. For every bite you take is either you're heading towards disease or you're heading towards better health. There's no in between.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you want your kids to be eating?
And I
Yeah.
have so many moms that will say, like, I don't want to be strict with my kids. I don't want to do that. I'm like, you don't have to be. If your kid loves ice cream, like, let's say your kid is obsessed with ice cream, make protein ice cream. It's,
Right.
I've kind of gone through like a health like route with like, I love cooking. I've always loved cooking. Cooking's great. But I've tried a few new things lately. And I've learned how easy it is to make simple things. It's so easy to make salad dressing. It's so easy to make bread if you want to eat it. It's not time consuming. It's not hard. It's not like this huge endeavor. It's very simple. So if your kids are obsessed with ice cream, you can make protein ice cream really simple. If your kids are obsessed with something, make it fun and like you said, interactive and like cook it together, bake it together, make it together, and like make it this memory for them. And they'll always remember that mom made healthy food for me instead of getting something at the store that is full of food dyes and colorings and all these things that are just going to really affect them in the long run.
Absolutely. And one thing too that I would highly recommend for moms out there is I use this. It's Peon is the brand, but it's an unflavored protein. You could put that in anything, and you don't taste it. You can't. It doesn't have a texture. You could put it in ice cream, and that's another way to sneak in some protein without the kids actually tasting it. But I think it's good for them to know, hey, I'm putting this in here, and this is why I
Yeah.
care about
Yeah.
you. Not doing it behind their back. Otherwise, they don't learn anything. But yeah,
Yeah,
When my
that's
son
true.
was little, to get him to eat healthy food because he fought me, of course. Of course he wanted to eat chicken nuggets, mac and cheese. But like I get it, but I wouldn't like I started putting my foot down and he loves computers. And I said to him and I'm like, "What would you do if you didn't clean your computer and take care of your computer and do all these things that you do?" And he's like, "Well, it would break." I'm like, "What do you think's happening inside you by the food choices you're making?" And it like just making them think of like it differently. It's like, "Oh, okay, I'll eat my broccoli." It's like, oh, okay, like yeah. And then they kind of like learn that way.
yeah. And
Yeah.
gosh, I've got kids. You want to be a D1 athlete, then this is what it looks like. This is what they eat. You know,
Yeah,
Reality.
absolutely.
you want to perform well because my kids are pretty competitive. This is what it looks like.
That's amazing. And you get to be that role model for them too. I mean, what is it like for your kids? Like, mom's a professional athlete. Like, do you ever hear stories of things like that their friends have said? Or, I mean, they must think it's pretty cool.
Well, it's kind of funny because my boys, when they were mid-teens, they don't really love that their friends can look me up and see me in a bikini. So I kind of went through that phase with the two so far. But at the same time, my 19-year-old who's going to compete with me in a couple months, he's like, Mom, I got like the Olympian genetics like you now, and then he'll sit and tease me all the time. And I'm like, it's a lot of work, buddy. I know you look great. You're 6'3". You've got a good fair amount of muscle, but it's also a lot of work. So he's probably the one that comments on it the most and is he's super, I don't know, supportive. And also, I mean, all my kids are, and they all want to come to every show. And the twins haven't been to any of my shows yet, but, yeah, it's kind of fun to hear their perspective and also listen to them. If they have concerns or they have questions, it's good to be open with your kids and talk to them because there's a misconception with the sport. Some people don't understand it and they see a
Yeah.
female in a bikini, a thong, and they think it may be a sexual thing. Well, it's not. You're judged on your physique. So, educating your kids on what it is and or your spouse so that they can understand the sport a little bit better and appreciate it instead of judging it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially, when I was an educator, I was in education for 20 years and a principal. I mean, teachers finding out that your principal is doing a competition like this, not everyone understands. So
Yeah.
if there were ever any questions or anything like that, I would always answer them and always I would check with my supervisor or superintendent, and they were always super supportive because they understood the sport more so than most people. So
That's good. That's really
yeah,
good. I've heard the
Yeah.
opposite story many times from teachers and even people that don't compete. I have friends that are in the education system and they're just like Instagram photos, fun stuff, like nothing bad, but they've struggled with that. So that's
yeah,
good that you had a good support.
I did, and I'm very thankful for that. But funny story, real quick. I had so I was just named principal of this middle school and had been working there a couple weeks, and I had my supervisor come in and he's like, "So I got to talk to you about this." And I'm like, "Okay." Like what? I know I did everything right. Like I'm working overtime. I'm like trying to make connections and relationships here, and he's like, "So we had a parent call in because a student made a meme of you and put your picture in the bikini and said, 'Take me to the principal's office.'" And then he starts laughing. He starts laughing because at first I'm like, "Oh my gosh, am I in trouble?" And he started laughing. He's just like, I'm not asking you to do anything different. You're not doing anything wrong. I just wanted to
Yeah.
bring it to your attention. And
Oh my God.
so
That's
when
You
really
had a
funny.
meme.
yeah, it's kind of funny. I never did see it, but so when the students started asking, and I had 1,500 students at my school, and they're like, "Are you a bodybuilder or this or that?" And I would just say, "Yep, yep, I am."
Yeah.
And just kind of normalize it so that it's not like this big taboo secret, for all these
Yeah.
14-year-old kiddos. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
That's
normalizing it's
funny.
like the best things to do.
yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like it's growing in popularity. It's grown
Hmm.
so much. So now it's really rare if somebody hasn't heard of it. But I remember when I first was telling people that I was a bikini competitor and my kids went to this like small, like Lutheran school. I was like, I'm a bodybuilder. I didn't want to
yeah.
say I was a bikini competitor. And then they'd look at me like, but you're so
What
tiny.
is that?
Forget it. Forget it. So that's
Uh,
interesting. Kids, but they do that whether you're in a bikini or not. You know how they are. They're just
true.
always trying to
That's
be
true.
trying to be funny.
I was
Um,
mortified though. Oh my gosh. I was like,
oh,
oh great, I'm
especially
gonna
if you're
lose
new and oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so
yeah.
funny. Some graphic design skills there and like some deep research to be able to find pictures too, right?
yeah.
That's funny. So, tell us what you're working on right now and what 2024 looks like for you.
Yeah. So I've been, let's see, my last show was September of 23. I did the Sasquatch show, which was so much fun. And afterwards, I thought I was going to take a big break because last year was busy with the Masters Olympia and just several shows. And
Yeah.
but Coach and I have been working hard. I've been eating a lot, so much. Oh my gosh, I'm like so much more than I probably ever have, just to try to add a little bit of size. He's happy with where we're at. I always get nervous. I'm so glad I have a coach because you're like, am I going to be ready? I don't know. What about this? What about this? And he's like, got it. Just follow my lead and you got it. So, just going to enter 2024 with hopefully a better physique, and that's my goal. Every time I step on stage anymore, it's going to be a better physique or not at all.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't have anything set in stone, but I just hope to come with a better physique than we did last year, which I feel very grateful and thankful for what we brought last year. But
Yeah.
always goals, right?
Yep. Always.
Always something.
Yeah.
Was there anything specifically in your feedback that they had like recommended working on for the next season?
It was mostly just, add 3 to 5 pounds all over if you could. Um, which is funny because when I first started bikini in 2018, I had way too big shoulders, and judges were saying, telling my coach, not one more lateral raise, like she needs to stop. And but then I was still winning, so you're like, what does that mean? Like, why did I win then if I, shouldn't do any more lateral raises? And so, we changed a bunch of things. And then last year it was, at the beginning of the year, it was add a teeny bit of size. And after the Masters Olympia, feedback was just if you could bring just a teeny bit more hamstrings. Um, and then, let's see, the last one was Sasquatch. Head judge just said, just, he's like, you just put a teeny bit of size and you are unstoppable.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've done. So we'll see.
Great.
But the fun thing about the division is it's always changing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you always have people coming and leaving, and every show is, different athletes. And
You
so,
never know who's going to show up.
yeah, you never know if it's your day or not your day, but if you bring your best, then you can feel confident. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're competing
Absolutely.
at the top of the
Hmm.
Masters Pro League, and so it's so close. It's those minor things which sometimes that just a little bit more this or a little bit more that can be like, what? Like, that seems like such a minor thing, but it would be very easy for a lot of athletes to kind of get in their head and overthink. And that was one thing we went to a seminar this weekend and they talked about like when they tell you it's a small change, like don't make massive changes, like
Yeah.
change your hair color and come in with a weird new
mhm.
posing routine and like re-overthink everything. So yeah, I think having because you've been with Shane for like years, so it helps that the two of you have that working relationship, and I think that
Yeah.
that's great too. He
And
knows your body and all of that.
you've got to have trust too with your coach. And, he sits behind judges, he knows and listens to things. And I trust him
Yeah.
1,000%. And if my coach is happy, I'm happy. So, every judging panel changes and is different too. So, I think just having good guidance is important.
Yeah, that relationship with your coach, and to have a coach that's like involved in the sport too.
Mhm.
They go to shows, they go to seminars, they're always learning, they're always trying to educate, they're always trying to be there for their athletes, be there for the sport. Because at the end of the day, we want to promote the sport, like you said, kind of at the beginning, like the NPC, IFBB, like they are doing so much for Masters, and that's amazing.
Mhm.
And they're always trying to do stuff for athletes, so like to be be able to trust your coach and like know that your coach is there for the sport and you is phenomenal, and to have that relationship with them.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I cannot wait to see you hit the stage this year. I'm definitely a huge fan and I'm
Thanks.
supporting you and screaming for you. I can't wait to see what this year brings.
Yes.
So, tell
Well, thank
everybody
you.
where they can find out more about you and follow your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my Instagram is IFBB Nicole Johnson, and I'm Nicole Briggs Johnson on Facebook. Yep, I'm still old and I use Facebook, but
So do we.
it's kind of like my scrapbook,
I'm
I
still
know.
34 right now. I'll be 35 Friday, and I like Facebook. Okay, I
You
really
young
do.
thing, you.
I know it's silly, but I like my memories popping up, and it's kind of where I keep all my kids'
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
and I'm very grateful and thankful to be a Angel Competition Bikini sponsored athlete, and they've been
Yes.
more than generous, just absolutely incredible to work with, and
Awesome.
I'm just grateful. So I thank you too so much for this opportunity and meeting you and getting to know you as well.
Thank
Yes,
you so much for
absolutely.
coming
Thank you
on.
so
Like,
much, Nicole.
your story
Yeah.
is amazing, and your growth in the sport and development and all the information that you share on here will help so many women. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening in, and we will talk to you next week.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.